Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this morning. My name is Amy Force. I am a consultant with the Jackson Collaborative Network and joined by Sarah.
It's true. I am Sarah, and Sarah Williams, and I'm also a Collaborative Network consultant at the Jackson Collaborative Network.
So we are gathering today to in an affinity group setting where this affinity group is about inequitable practices and policies. This particular one is around strategies to address inequities. This affinity group will look a little bit different than our typical ones because we have a special funding opportunity for folks. So we're going to focus a little bit more on the funding opportunity in the process versus really just more discussion and action planning around inequitable practices and policies. So if we want to take a minute to do quick introductions, we'll go through and see who's gathered with us today.
Feel free to unmute yourself and add your name and organization if applicable.
I'll go. My name is Marcus Gill. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the Jackson County ISD.
Good morning.
I'm Angie Guadagnini. I am the Community Resource Coordinator with the Department of Health and Human Services.
I'm Nicole Baker. I'm the Aging and Adult Services Manager at Region 2 Area Agency on Aging.
I'm Dina Morgan, the Chief Executive Director of the Dungy Tree Heritage Foundation.
Good morning.
I'm Ryan Smith. I'm the Government and Community Relations Manager for the Jackson Area Transportation Authority.
My name is Deborah, and I am the Mobility Navigator for the Rides to Wellness program from the Jackson Area Transportation Authority.
And I am Angela Kane, Operations Manager from Jackson Area Transportation Authority and Override to Wellness.
Anyone else? Oh, looks like Harry. I'll call you out.
Oh, hi. I'm Harry Wilson. I'm a board member of the Department of Health and Human Services Jackson County Board, but I'm also the chairperson of the United Center for Caring at St. John's United Church of Christ.
Did we get everyone? I'm secretly scrolling to the side. All the things you do when you screen share. Well, thank you everyone for being here. It's exciting to see faces we know and see new faces and faces in different spaces and all of it. So yeah, well, and as Amy said, today we will do our best to help move people along who have been here so we're not repetitive, and also maybe catch people up who are new to this space. And so hopefully at the end, we will all be one big happy group with the same outcomes and same understandings. And if not, then we will ask a lot of questions, and hopefully you do the same.
Okay, so again, apologies if we've gone through this a couple times in the past, but it's just a quick overview of kind of the intent of these affinity groups. Most folks, and again, it's not necessarily linear, but most folks start out by looking at our building a partner profile, which is just a brief name, organization, and kind of the work that you're doing in the community. This allows us to know what work you're doing, and we build partner profile, kind of a database where folks can look at what everyone else is doing and connect on similar projects or root causes that they're working on, barriers, things like that that folks are encountering. And then we encourage all to engage in these affinity group meetings so we can discuss challenges, barriers, work on action planning, and just kind of connect with each other. I know in this virtual world, it's difficult to do that. So these affinity groups have been a great way of building connections. And then action planning, we are really trying to move to action rather than sitting around and discussing all of the issues. We are encouraging you to build an action plan. So really state your problem statement and then look at the whys behind the problem statement, dig a little into that that root cause, and build strategies around that to try to tackle that problem. Always during that process, we encourage authentic community engagement. So we want to make sure that we're hearing community voices around that issue, and that those that are closest to the problem are helping build the strategies to tackle that. And then again, tracking and reporting progress. We want to make sure we're moving the needle on things and not just throwing things out there and hoping that they work. So we build in some measurements so that we can make sure that we're accomplishing what we want to. And then updating. So we want to make sure we're reporting successes, barriers, issues. There are multiple ways to do that with our network, just kind of putting in small wins or updating action plans that things you've accomplished and building new strategies. So that was quick and I speak quickly, so I apologize, but I think most of you are pretty familiar with the process and the action in the affinity group. Any questions? Okay, then we will move forward to the good stuff.
So this is just a quick, well, I shouldn't say it's quick. There are a lot of words. But this is compared to our initial kickoff meeting. This is a quick overview of what has already been proposed and parameters around the unique opportunity for funding that we have that aligns with action plan strategies. So this is all of the parameters. If some of you, maybe some or all of you have worked in, I don't know if we're calling it a grant, not really, you know, but like with money usually comes, this is what you have to include, here's what you should include, here is a timeline. So the network has $70,000 coming from Shire funding through MDHHS, and it has to support a project that directly addresses a COVID-related inequity. So this is something that maybe some or all of you have been working on things, and because of COVID or during the COVID time frame, something got worse, something increased, something expanded, and this money is directed towards that. We are also happy to help you think creatively if you're like, oh, actually, I am already doing this work. I just need help framing it. Or I actually can think of a thing, but I'm not sure if it got worse during COVID. Like, okay, well, let's find out. Let's look at data. So this is something that is a requirement that whatever strategy is funding, we have to show that it was amplified during COVID. This group, like Amy said, we have 3 affinity groups right now that are tied around different root causes, and the equitable policies and practices one is this one, and it's kind of operating a little bit differently for a couple months as we hopefully gather people, design a process, and decide funding by end of December. So that is where this work sits in this group that you are in today. The group will decide how to award funding and who gets the awarded funding. So no backbone staff, no network staff people will be doing it. It really will be, the whole point of this is that the group, so you all, and you all will decide, do we have all of the right people at the table to then make that decision? We'll decide how it's selected and also which ones are selected. Must be defined by December 2021. And then there was an asterisk around funding cannot be used to support planning or network level infrastructure. It's not really meant for training. It really is earmarked for programs or things that people are doing or want to do to address a COVID related inequity in the community. And then we don't really have, you know, sometimes when you ask for funding, there's like a request for proposal or an RFP or something. And what we are asking for is that people submit action plans and strategies, and people have already done that. It's a normal part of our affinity groups and of our coaching and of our TA offerings. And it really helps us think through things with you. So I'll use Deborah as an example because we're doing it right now with her, and I feel comfortable enough to use her for an example. So right now, Deborah and Ryan together are submitting an action plan around transportation in the community. So just by going through the action planning process, I'm able to say, oh, that's interesting. Well, how do you know that? Oh, you partner with this data thing? I didn't even know that. Cool, put that here. And so this is something that we do with partners all the time. And sometimes it allows us to ask you questions that might drill down farther. But it is not something new. It's just, this is how we are capturing the strategies that want to be funded. And then we are asking that you all track and report progress. So for example, if Marcus proposes a strategy and the group decides it gets to be funded, then in X amount of time, monthly, quarterly, I don't know, Marcus would report like, actually, I did this thing. I got 5 people to my group, but actually my goal was 10. So I'm going to switch strategies a little bit. I'm going to go here. So there's an expectation that we would get an update and as much engagement as you can in groups, right? In meetings, because everyone is busy, but there is an expectation of, and then also what you learned, like, oh, actually, thanks for the money. It actually did nothing. I learned, or whatever. There's never, we said it yesterday too, right? In another group, like very rarely is there failure unless you have the wrong people at the table, maybe making decisions. But usually if you're trying to implement something, the worst that can come is a lesson learned or data collected, or like, oh gosh, that did not work. I would like to go in a different direction. So this is one slide. We've got another one coming up. Is there anything here before? I guess I could get through all of them, and then I'll stop. And then these parts are really important. We've talked about it. We do talk about this in all of the work that we do around how the community is engaged and how people with lived experience are being engaged in all of the work you do. But specifically to this initiative, it is very specific to how have community members with lived experience been engaged in the process of all of this, right? So like Amy and I are not deciding that who gets funding. It really is a representation of the community that says, oh, we think this is the best use of the funding. And how have partners like all of you engaged community members with lived experiences when you're thinking about the strategies being considered, right? So if someone proposes a strategy because your great-great-grandpa thought it was a good idea, like, we might say, okay, well, how do you know that the strategy is going to address this problem? Have you talked to people that are closest to the problem? Have you talked to people that don't come utilize your services and ask them why? So these are the questions that we would ask, and that these 2 italicized points are the most important. And I will say Amy and I have done a lot of outreach and also asked you all to do a lot of outreach. We have people here today at the table because they have been invited by all of you. So we are counting on our network partners to also reach out to people that they might know who would be a good representation of the community, because we know that we don't know everyone, and we also don't have the best relationships with everyone. We trust that everyone has different relationships and that we're capitalizing on all of it. And then in an ideal world, we will have the process figured out, finalized. And then this group would say, we recommend, say, for example, there are 30 strategies that are proposed, and the group says these 10 will get funding with X amount of money. This is our recommendation. Yes, we all agree, or whatever the process looks like. It goes to the council for approval on December 21. And then pretty quickly after that, implementation begins. So council officially, like can say yes and no to things, but we are trusting, and they have already agreed that if this group is robust and representative of the community and looks right like how it should, and is decides a way to decide things and disperse funding, that essentially the council will agree with the recommendations. We should also note, and we've been saying it as well, that if we can't get representation at the table, or if it's too, like, if we find that as a barrier, there's a chance that the council will decide to use funding in a different way. What did I miss, Amy? That was a lot.
That was a
not
lot.
quick.
No,
I know.
no, and I think it's
lied.
good. No, it was good. So I think that was an overview. Like we said, some folks are familiar with it and some folks are not. I'm going to pause for a second, and I think a couple of folks joined. If you want to do a quick unmute and introduce yourselves, that would really be helpful. Morning, Toby.
Hi, I'm Toby Berry from Community Action Agency.
Thank you. Okay.
Freddie Dancy, City of Jackson, City Council member.
Morning, Freddie.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pause for questions on all that. Like Sarah said, that was a lot. We ran through it. If anyone missed anything or needs us to pop back slides, we're happy to do that.
And there might be some of you here today that may or may not, I'll use Harry as an example because we've had some conversation, whereas like Harry might not exactly be putting in an action plan, but he might know people that are really perfect for this, or maybe you are, Harry. I'm mostly making this up, but like maybe, but Harry also has his toes dipped in a lot of different things, right? So like as he learns about this and he's like, oh, right, like maybe this would be a good idea for these people to come or learn about this. Or and Angie, I know like your role in different groups, and as we're talking about this, like maybe you can think of people. And so, and also we know that time is wild and we're just like doing our best with the timeline.
We'll get into more discussion as we move forward too. So questions might arise around the grant funding. But we'll move through a couple more things. So Sarah talked about the action planning and submitting strategies. We're going to touch on this quickly. I know many of you are familiar with this, but part of those requesting funding will need to complete an action plan. There is a link through our website, and we will provide that after the meeting, where you can go in and submit an action plan. And this is basically stating your problem statement. This is what you're seeing in the community, and this is how you're seeing it. So these are the questions that you'd go through. What's the problem? Who is most impacted? We really encourage folks to disaggregate that data to find out who's most impacted. What's the data that you have that shows this? And then what action? So that's basically your strategy piece. What action do you commit to addressing this? What root cause does it address? It might be multiple. And then it would be like kind of visioning how it will be successful, like what will be the results of this? How will you measure that? And then what assets do you plan on leveraging that you already have? It might be about connections and relationships, things like that. And then what tools or resources, supports do you need to be successful, which would probably be the place where you would indicate the funding that you would need in order to have this strategy to move forward. So a little quick overview of those that are looking for funding, that would be the first step that you would take. And we're hoping that those action plans are submitted by December 1st so that the group can come back and review those strategies and decide what makes sense. So I think what we need to focus on today.
Can I interject something? Also with these, I know some people are not familiar with action planning, and even if you are, it can still feel like a lot, and there's like a lot of questions. Amy and I, on a regular basis, serve as support for network partners in various capacities. And one of them is helping to develop action plans. So it could be that you actually have an idea of how you would like to use funding, but you are not sure how you will measure success. And so you might say like, oh, actually, give me a week on that. I'm going to get back to you. Or you might say, I don't know if I have any assets or resources. And, or you might like, we just want to make it clear that you don't have to have a perfect polished something. I will say by the time the group decides to look at all of the action plans and decide where the funding goes, a more polished version is probably beneficial to everyone, but you don't have to have everything flushed out in order to start the process. Amy and I have had conversations with different network partners around this, and ideally our conversations will maybe help you figure this out. Or if you're like, actually, I'm totally stuck and I can't think of any way to think if I could be successful in this, we could say, okay, well, maybe there's another community program that's similar who has measured some success. Like, let's think about that. So please know that, well, we have a lot of work to do in a short amount of time, but if you would like help creating an action plan, if you would like help walking through these questions and progress, even if you're like, oh gosh, I'm going to need to check with my supervisor about leverages or assets I can leverage. I'd like to get back to you. Like, this is a conversation piece that Amy and I do all the time, except the only difference now is that we're on like a timeline. But I just want to clarify that you're not on your own here. We will not throw you out in the cold without a coat. I don't know. That's not really an analogy, but we are here to help you through this process. Even if you have an idea, or I know Harry's even said like, hey, what do would this thing count? Or what about this? Does this thing fit? Like, we're happy to have those conversations and then also answer where we can and then redirect where we can't.
Excellent. Any questions on the action planning or strategy building?
Process in general.
Yep.
So seeing that it's directly related to COVID, and lots of our community partners have experienced issues directly related to COVID. Is this grant opportunity, has it been dispersed to community partners or just to affinity groups, or is it available for just anybody in the community? Like, how do I pass it on to them?
It is.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was gonna say, we definitely sent it out a lot of different ways. Angie, I actually I'm happy to follow up with you afterwards, but I sent you an email. I'm not sure if you saw that, but I think someone else had recommended that I reach out to you as well, about specifically your maybe emergency needs coalition people and
Emergency
how
needs. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
yeah. So I actually I can follow up with you afterwards as well.
Yes, let's
but
do that.
Yeah, a lot of people have gotten this.
Okay.
And also we know that emails can look like a lot and overwhelming, and which is why timing is not on our side, Oh, did you?
It's in my junk email. So,
Oh no.
yeah, so I didn't see it. So, okay. Yes,
Oh,
let's connect
no.
after this meeting, because
Okay, darn
needs
it.
group this would be great for them. Yes.
So
Okay, so I'm not sorry
this.
how that happened, because you and I have emailed before too. I'm not sure why
We
that
have.
happened.
I don't know. I don't know if there's an update or something, but I'm looking now. I've got a whole bunch of emails in there that I should be seeing.
Oh no. Okay, well, we learned one thing today.
Yes, we did.
So you absolutely, when you think about, that's exactly it. And there's no requirement to be a partner in our partnership. It's really anyone in the community that's doing the work. The only requirement is that they're complete an action plan. And so we can help all the steps with that. And there's no difference between someone who's attended 100 meetings or 0 meetings, except maybe they might understand the network a little better. But no, everyone is fair shot.
Yeah, and we've reached out far and wide to try to specifically diversify this group, because we want to make sure that the folks that are deciding on the process are those that have lived experience or are closest to the issues. So yeah, we've done a lot of targeted outreach, individual emails. We've reached out to some of the groups like Residents in Action and just folks that we know are doing the work and that are on the front lines. We've done lots of emailing, we've reached out, we've done newsletters, all that kind of thing. And we did a call to action in this group to say, you all know who's doing the stuff, bring them to the meeting because we want to hear or bring their, initiatives or their voices to the meeting because we want to make sure that we're representing those that are closest. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we're going to move forward? Kind of about action planning or the funding.
Is there a deadline where, the people on the front line, the organizations or individuals can come in and submit their action plan? Or I know they're due by December 1st.
Right. Good question, Dina. I think that ideally it would be December 1st, and part of that will be up to this group. So if we feel like this is the group that can really understand or develop process, that this group can help decide that. We threw out December 1st because we know that this is a quick turnaround and those strategies need to come back to this group to for this group to look at and decide where funding needs to be allocated if we end up deciding that this is the right group. So yeah, December 1st in an ideal world, but that might change based on feedback.
I do have a question because I want to make sure, I want to see if this is something that's even worth doing an action plan for. So I run a basketball program for one of our school districts in Jackson County, and it actually supports two totally different communities. But we have not been able to do any fundraising due to COVID. Would that be something that we could create? And it supports from kindergarten all the way to 12th graders. Would that be something that we could put an action plan together for and request some funding?
That's a good question. And again, that's for this group to decide because Sarah and I aren't the decision makers. What I would consider in that is, are there inequities in the program that you need the funding for because of COVID? So everything needs to tie back into, we saw a decrease in, this population in attendance because of COVID, when COVID hit or whatever. So if you can tie that the funding will be spent on this team because we saw inequities due to COVID. Probably not specifically just to fundraising, but there was a lack of attendance or folks that could have afford to use the programming because of COVID.
There's definitely some inequities and we could tie it into. I just wanted to make sure that it was okay to do it for a sports program. And it's K through 12.
Oh, yeah. This is I think sports or non-sports. I think that is it's community. So this is for sure like community, but to Amy's point, and also Marcus, I would say, since we're using your example, to make sure to tie that what your basketball camp is looking to address, tie it to one of our root causes, right? Like, is it trust in the community? Is it something like tie it to a thing? And happy to help with that if you'd like. But with all of our strategies, like obviously you're doing this program for a reason, right? And maybe it's connection, but like let's tie it to a thing to make it fit. And that would go across the board for any of the programs, any of the strategies that would like to be funded.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hey, Marcus, just a quick note. Jackson Community Foundation has a grant opportunity right now for up to $500 for sports for kids.
Jackson Community Foundation, thank you so much.
Community Foundation, yep.
Might be 1,200.
Oh, really? Is it
500?
I don't remember. 500 in my head, but I know they have a grant opportunity right now specifically for youth sports. Sorry, off topic, but thought I'd share that before we're done.
Please share all the things.
I wonder if there's an opportunity where we can all as a group collaborate together and come up with an action plan.
Well,
I know there's transportation. I know that's needed. We have sports and other emergency needs. So I don't know if we can all come up with an action plan together and collaborate.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I can tell you that transportation, you just mentioned transportation is huge everywhere. Medicaid is by contract. All Medicaid plans provide transportation for medical appointments. If you have straight Medicaid, I provide transportation for medical appointments, but for families to go to the laundromat, to go to the grocery store, to go to school events, to pick up their child from school, to do all of those kinds of things. Transportation is a huge issue all over the county. It's all over the state, but right here, we're just seeing all kinds of problems with that. So I would be absolutely willing to have some conversation about doing something together to address a need that we see. That's a great idea.
That's great. And to be honest, there will be, this group will kind of decide what that looks like, right? So say, for example, the only thing that is that anyone requesting a funding for a strategy, there will be an action plan. So let's pretend that Angie, you partner with Dina and you create an action plan that says that I'm going to do this. It would be then up to you both or whoever to figure out what that would look like. And this is how we will spend the money. And this is how we will measure success. And so, and then it will be up to the group to say, actually, that's a great use of funding, or actually maybe another community is already doing that. You should do this, right? So we want to be really clear that we want to do things not the traditional way. And we want to embrace something that, like, I'm not sure if that will work, but like, okay, let's put it on the table, right? So, and to your point, Dina, I love that you also talked about collaboration, because the idea with our affinity groups is that is the intent. It's been a little bit challenging to get people together at the table for various reasons, especially because we're at a virtual table. But even hearing the different, right? Like I did not know that. And I learned actually last week from Deborah talking about like the transportation issues and Medicaid barriers. And then Angie, right, reiterates today. So like the things that I'm learning, and if I have a transportation service, how beneficial it would be if we all are together, right? So, absolutely, that's the intent of doing this work together, is that we can make a bigger difference together, whether funding or not. Truthfully, funding helps, but.
Okay, I'm gonna bump through a couple more slides because I want to really get talking about process, because we've mentioned so many times, this is going to be a short turnaround. We talked a little bit last week, so for those that were here, it might be repetitive, but we really want to look at the process and different models and how funding should be allocated. And we're trying to get away from the standard, white middle-class men sitting at a table deciding funding. So this group, if it's diverse enough, and that's going to be a decision this group needs to make, do we have the right people at the table? And does this represent community that is closest to the problem? That's going to have to be a decision this group decides. But some ideas of places, other places that have done funding, Community Foundation just kind of redid their whole way of allocating funding, where they got community voice, right? It went out there, people got to weigh in and give input on who should get the funding based on what they're seeing in the community. So that was a really creative way to like flip the tables and make sure that community voice, because that is going to be essential for this funding, is community members making decisions about who gets funded. We gave an example too of Neighbor Up in Cleveland, Ohio. They've got real creative. They had pools of money and they did gatherings. They didn't call them meetings, gatherings in locations that were unique to their neighborhood, that were accessible. It was informal. People came. It was like an informal voting thing. So the money literally just kind of got put in a room where it was in the neighborhoods amongst the people, and they decided how that funding, by like really kind of a casual vote thing. But that's kind of our thinking, like flip the tables on the way this is dispersed. So that will be the charge of this group, hopefully soon, to decide what does it look like, how are we distributing that funding. And I think we sent a link to this. So this was developed by the community engagement team in our network several years ago, and it gave some examples of how to hear community voice, how to authentically engage community members. There were a couple, Neighbor Up is down here, but there were a lot of different ideas on how to make sure that the community is both engaged, heard, their voices are heard, and they are part of designing strategies and distributing funding. So but I don't want to get too much into that because I know we have some discussion to get into. So again, back to the two questions that Sarah focused on, what will a design look like and how are we making sure this reflects community voice? I think the first question in the room is, does this group currently convened represent enough of community and community voice?
And if not, how do we get there? You know?
Yeah, I think that's going to depend on what is the issue that we want to address.
This is Harry. So I'm working on a project, and I think I told you once before, in Indiana with 46 colleges and universities, and we have a mini grant process, and we give out every year about 12 mini grants, and they're not much money. They're like $4,000 maybe, and they come. I mean, the community groups come up, the universities and colleges come up with the problem, and then they propose they do a little research on what looks like an evidence-based strategy. They propose the strategy, and then we fund them. It's all done through SurveyMonkey. It's pretty slick. But in this case, I think we have a lot of people in the room, and I think if we could just maybe rather than start with the action plan, maybe we start with nominating all the groups that we need to look at, or that we think are affected by, maybe by neighborhood. I'm thinking, I know a group that meets. They're a bunch of adults that are part of the county guardian system, and they've been isolated since the beginning of COVID, and they used to have dances, and their dances went away, and they're gone now for good because the people that organized them passed away during this time. So I mean, they have to bring that back, and so that would be an isolation issue. Or I mean, I like your idea about what are the issues, but I think they're not just one issue. I think you could do mini grants and do many issues, or 5 or 6 or 7 or more, 10 issues. 10 issues, $7,000 a grant. That's a lot of money for small community organizations.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think multiple strategies make sense, or multiple issues that we're looking to fund. What we need to know. So yes, I know that there's struggle because people want to see what the strategies are before. Conversation is really about who gets to decide. Like, so the strategies, however many are built, we might get 30 that are submitted, we might get 7, whatever. But once those are built and is this the group that decides who gets funding, and how is that decision made? Is it a vote? Is it put out to your organization to vote? Is it prioritized based on, I mean, that's, so before we know what the funding submissions are, is this the group that is this reflect enough community members that we feel confident in saying, yes, we can do something. Like we want to get away from corporate people and organizational people deciding funding for the needs of the community without their voice being present in the decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does anybody know how the Community Foundation kind of decided who they were going to send out those requests for information, or for people to vote on it? I mean, how did they put together their list?
I think they went far and wide with that. I think they put them out through 211 email blasts. I think they sent them to like emailed different groups that they knew, that Human Services Coordinating Alliance and the network, and so they emailed far and wide, and then 211 blast, things like that. I'm not sure how much they did. I don't really know. That would be a good question to ask Dana, and I can reach out to her and get back to that to the group if that's something we want to pursue. But
Angie, I saw you went off mute. Did you have insight on how they did that?
I was just going to say exactly that they put out the net as far as they could. I saw it on social media. It was emailed to any groups that they are in any way involved in. It was emailed out, and it was on social media, and it's been shared a number of times via email to other groups. So they really, I thought they did a good job of getting it out there for people to see.
So, and my reason in asking is that acceptable in this scenario? I mean, I think that there is a wide array of people that are on the call right now, but I know there's also other people that probably wanted to be here, but scheduling is, I know you all feel it too. Scheduling is awful these days. So, I mean, I don't think we want to leave anybody's voices out simply because of scheduling issues.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that was one of our thoughts as well, especially when we're on such a short timeline of like, well, who has done something similar and done it well? And are there any pieces in there that we should or need to modify? Are there any things, and does this group feel like that? And again, admittedly, I don't know every step of their process. We know it from kind of the outside, but do we feel like that, does the group feel like that is like sufficient? Does that feel like a robust enough, way? Because admittedly, in my mind, it is, but in maybe someone else's mind, they're going to be like, actually, you totally left out this group. You didn't even think of them, right? So just the acknowledgement of like, this is what we know, and that might not be it, or it might need to be modified or tweaked, and that's definitely and do we have the right people? Is everyone here that would push back on that, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not asking for pushback, but you know what I mean? Like a diverse conversation where people think differently, or like that actually is not the right way to, get information or.
Not the net that gets cast. I think I agree with the trying to get as many people as we can, but we should get as many applications as we can, and then as we look through those, that we come up with some criteria that you've already put out there, that it's got to be something about equity, that it has to be the more it comes up from the ground up, the better. How many people were engaged in the design process? I mean, you could kind of come up with some building blocks that says this is how we're going to evaluate each of the processes, and then just put it out there for people to come in with ideas.
And we know that Jackson is a small city. It's very competitive.
Yeah, that's
very,
right.
very competitive. So I do think that this group, we can figure it out,
I agree.
to get the funding.
And I think you also look at, is there alternative funding? I mean, if it's a school issue and schools already got COVID money, then they've already made decisions on their money. So if it's a program that's a big program that you're trying to stay away from, they're already going to have COVID monies that came in. So, this should be, I don't know, to me, it should be reserved for, church groups and real small community organizations that didn't get any kind of funding and that struggled through this to serve minority communities or whatever. To me personally, I think that would be the main goal, and that would be kind of the rating, the scale that you would rate the proposals on.
Yeah, I agree with Harry. A lot of the organizations such as ours, the Dungy Tree Heritage Foundation, we're underfunded. We're the boots on the ground, we're on the front line. Yeah. And we do need extra funding. We need help and support. So I agree with Harry.
Dina, tell me a little bit more without not getting specific on names or organizations, but the competition that you feel, how is that kind of bubble up in your world? And
well, they have all of the resources that they need. They have the big team players. They have people who know how to look for funding and write grant proposals and action plans. And the smaller organizations don't have that type of support, technical support, or a team that can, look for grants and funding and to submit the proposals. And they're doing so much work on the ground, they really don't have time. They're overworked and underfunded. And it's very competitive when you have a big agency like the Community Action Agency or the Department of Health and Human Services. They have the resources that they need, and the smaller organizations do not. So it makes it difficult when they come in. You know, they know how to write the proposals, the action plans, and you know what I'm saying.
Yep. No,
It makes it hard.
Yeah.
It's a barrier for the smaller
sure.
organization.
Mhm. You're right, because a lot of the bigger organizations have specific grant writers
Yeah.
that have terminology, and they know what you're looking for, and you're absolutely right. I think that's the reason why Amy and Sarah are talking about having that life experience, that we make that representation, so that those are the folks that are going to be benefiting from this grant. So those are the folks that see, I mean, I live every day this need or that issue or those circumstances. So I think that's exactly why we want to have that representation, so that it's not just Community Action or DHS that are applying and getting all that money.
Yeah,
And
so
another
I would
thing-
say that's why I think that maybe this isn't, like, I don't need to be in this group, because this is not, if you're looking for community representation, right? What you're saying is you're looking for folks who are boots on the ground like Dina, then having our organization represented here may not be the place. And you know, this is not, our budget went up $8.5 million because of COVID. And I'm not applying for any more dollars anywhere at this point. So
No, but Toby, you might lend insight into the process and into decision making, knowing or seeing the symptoms that are rising up in the community. So you might not apply for funding, but you might lend insight into these three people or these type of projects, or I don't know.
And
or
also,
might know someone, honestly, you know, or know someone.
Also, it gives the big organizations a chance to connect with the smaller organizations and collaborate together. Because I'm sure that we can help you in some area, you can help us. I don't think it's all in vain. I'm just saying, you know, what our struggle is.
yeah, I do think, you know, some of my concern about the process is that I don't want us to set up a system that in and of itself becomes inequitable, because we've created this big process that has to happen in order for us to push money out. That is like, let us not think the way that we think as big bureaucratic organizations. Don't become the next DHS. Don't become the next, like, how can we set up a system that makes it easy for people to access what they need in order for them to do the equity work that they need to do on the ground?
And Toby, I think that statement right there is exactly why we need you here.
Yes.
Like, you know, somebody to think like that and be able to say that, that's exactly why we need you here helping making these decisions.
Thank you for that, Marcus.
So to that point, we agree. And that is why we have not brought a thing and said, look at this pretty process that worked for this place over here. And they did it in 1 week turnaround time. And here you go. This is how we're going to do it, because we are not developing it. And which is why we have the slide of like, here are some examples, maybe are helpful, maybe some aren't. Maybe people decide that the JCF the Jackson Community Foundation, the way they did it was good, but actually this part was missing and they wanted to add on. Those are just ideas. And we also agree that we don't want to do things the same way, which is why we're here, which is why we made outreach to many of you, because we would like to do things differently. And we are not looking for the traditional set outcomes and you have to meet this, this, and this. It really is up to the group. If the group decides, we decided that, I'll use Dina for an example. We had a great discussion and we're working with Dina on creating an action plan for funding. And we talked about using a Facebook post as a way to collect data. And I think that's fantastic. She put out a Facebook post and people commented on barriers to transportation. And I was like, that is incredible. And I'll say for myself, I'm like, I was right in grad school for like evaluation stuff and you would never consider that. And I was like, I think that's so amazing. And what we should be doing, right, is like thinking creatively and differently and what actually makes sense for the people that are doing the work, not what makes sense for how we've done things.
I'm gonna leave all kinds of awkward pauses because I want to make sure everyone's voice is heard.
Also, there are a lot of people, such as myself, who are sacrificing to work for the community. They are choosing whether to go to work or to, provide the services that the community needs. So, like you said, the people that are closer to the problem are the solution. And they need, funding as well. We need funding. Maybe we can pay them a stipend, or something, help them pay a bill or something, just for helping out, for knocking on doors and connecting with the community. Because
Yeah.
a lot of people are out there, they're ashamed to ask for help. We have grandparents who are taking care of grandchildren and they don't have transportation, they don't have Facebook. So, connecting with the community and getting out on the front line, that's where it's at.
Yeah, I agree, Dina. And it's amazing work and amazing sacrifice that people are doing to serve others. This particular funding can't go directly to like the staff, but it could go to resources that would help support that staff person in other ways.
It's a tricky balance because, I mean, if we're going to be transparent, there are rules, right? With this money, you saw the slide, we went over it. This is what we were told we have to stay within these parameters. So that's not really, we can't budge on that. We can't change that, but we can change a lot of other things. So like the group can decide, we have to be able to show that, say for example, we'll use Marcus as example of the basketball program. Like, the group can decide that data to show like inequities within COVID can be very creative. It doesn't have to be that you went on Qualtrics and created a thing. Like it doesn't, we can be creative with this and the group can decide what counts. The group can decide that like this thing that Marcus presented, yep, that's fantastic. It's great. He used a Facebook post, or I'm just using that as an example because we talked about that earlier with Dina, and I think it should be different and creative and outside the box of what we are used to. That's the intent of this.
I just need a little clarification. This money cannot be used for staffing for whatever the strategy is.
Yeah, we can go back up to the beginning. We
Sorry,
covered it.
I
that's
apologize that I need clarity because I was late.
No, that's okay.
Apologize.
Yeah, so this was in the Shire funding parameters. So it says cannot be used to support planning, infrastructure, or capacity building, like specifically around training. Like cannot, like they don't want it to be used for like training things.
But this isn't saying that if you have a strategy, so if you have a strategy of like Dina, boots on the ground, doing whatever, she should be able to pay an hourly rate to do that work.
If it's a strategy.
If it's like a direct service, that person should be able to pay themselves to do that direct service.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes, that.
Yeah,
but we're not, right. But we don't want to use the money to have someone come in and do a staff training.
Gotcha. but that means like what you were saying, Dean, where you have to choose between,
Right.
you should, like, our staff get paid to do their job, you should
Right.
get paid to do your job. That becomes a piece of the application.
And I feel like so these are the words, right, that were given to us around the parameters. And I agree with you, Toby. And so like, can we also find a way to be creative in the wording to, I also don't know, like my understanding is that if this group proposes and recommends a thing, that council is going to say, yes, looks great, move it along, right? And I don't know how much they're going to look at things or ask questions, but to
We'll try to get
me,
clarification on that, but yeah, I think.
yeah, we
that-
are working with Dina for that purpose. Yes, to try and like take the things, put them in an action plan to make them
Yeah,
succinct.
because I
Yeah.
think I live in the grant world, like reading this language to me says you can do that. That's not a disallowed cost. And also, if you can't do that, then we're also just potentially setting up more
Yeah.
inequities.
I completely agree.
Like,
Yeah, no, I agree.
so,
We'll double check on that, but I think it does read that if it is directly to support the program, like the person distributing the program or whatever it is, then that I would think that would fall into this, but I'll get clarification.
Well, yeah, we can ask too, but we were talking before, like if well, when we were talking with Dina, if she's doing a strategy around addressing transportation and like these are the things that are happening, I think it's more about what root cause and like what are you working on, and less about, it's gonna be up to right, like it and up to the group on like how are we tracking this, how are we measuring success, how are we deciding that part, because it's not going to be the usual. It's going to be, we'll be asking for updates like, oh, how's your work going? Any challenges you need help with, but it will not be the traditional line item, like report how you're spending the money.
Do we have an outline how we can spend the money, what it can be used for?
It really, I think the words they used are what it cannot be used for. So the things that we were talking about, like they don't want people coming in with like training their staff on equity or something like that. They don't want that. So they don't, but Dina, I know in our previous conversations, like the work that you're doing would certainly fit in, like we just have to show that something increased during the COVID period of time. And I think we've already talked about that too, right? Like the transportation piece, and
yeah,
all we have to do is just kind of connect it. But the work, really the goal of this money is to get into hands of people who don't traditionally have a lot of funding, or maybe don't sit at the tables where all of the money is. Like that is the goal. And also we're trying to facilitate that very quickly in a short amount of time, trying to get it out into as many hands as possible, and trusting that people, like, I appreciate Deborah inviting Angie, right? Because then Angie can invite people, and like that is, in a real world, like 6 months time would be really great to do all of this. And so we're just going to do our best. We're going to give our best effort in the amount of time that we have.
Yeah, and in thinking about the process of how we're going to get community input on what gets funded, be thinking about the timeline. So by the 16th of December, we should have recommendations finalized. So if we're looking to get input, it's going to go to the council on the 21st. So the 16th, this group or whatever group we've decided is the appropriate group to make decisions, should have all those lined up and ready to be submitted by the 16th of December. I think we have another meeting scheduled for the 2nd of December, which would look at finalizing, this is what this group has decided. We've decided that we're going to bring all of the strategies here, and these are the voices that are going to make the decision. And then by the 16th, we'll line those up and the decisions will be made. Does the group feel like that's enough time? Is that, or not, can't change the time, but as far as number of meetings or when we're meeting or decisions that are being made, and certainly some of this can be done offline. We can be emailing, folks can submit ideas of what they think.
You
The
also don't
decisions-
have to be a part of this meeting to submit an action plan for funding. We're kind of hoping that's not the case. In my ideal world, Angie's going to go back to her people. She's going to email it out or call people, and then people will either email us, contact us, watch a recording, whatever they want to do. Happy to have one-on-one conversations with people, whatever fits best. And that, like, they can, we don't have time during meetings to go walk through action planning and walk through that process. So like offline, we are doing that on the side so that these meetings can be saved for, like, what is our process? Do we all agree? Do we have the right people here? What are the steps if we don't have the right people here? And then it's like, okay, great. So, and then Amy and I are working on helping people with their action planning, helping putting it in a frame, and then deciding the group, looking at all of the strategies that have been submitted, like early December. And the problem we've had so far is just getting people, because we've had like 2 weeks.
This is a small thing, and I'm sorry if you've already done it somewhere else, but can you put maybe the link to the application or something in the chat? Because I've looked on the website and I can't find it. So I'd like to be able to share it with a few groups that I'm aware of, but that will be needed. Thanks.
We've got, we will send, can I do chat? Yes, we can do chat, and we'll send it. We have a follow-up email. We'll make sure, Nicole, will you make sure that I have your correct email address? Will you just put it in the chats to make sure we capture it? And we have a slide of information that has these parameters in, like, the funding information. And then we have the action planning link. So that is essentially like link for application, because we don't really have what, we're just using the action planning process as the application.
So Nicole, if
So-
you're on the website, you go up to partner resources and it'll bring down action plan. That's the application-ish. It's just saying, here's your problem statement, and the slides we ran through a little bit earlier. So it's not an application, it's an action plan. Because really, ideally, even if they don't get funded, it would be amazing to have significant steps around an issue you're trying to address either way. And these can be utilized just moving forward. It will help you think through making sure that you're reaching targeted populations, things like that. And potentially could be available, but this may not be the only funding source that comes our way. So yeah.
We can move forward in our slides. It was really, we have our next steps are really helping people create action plans or create their applications, used with quotation marks, but also deciding, like, does this group feel like it is complete enough? Does the group think that who we have at the table, or who we will have, or do we need like a deadline, right? Like, oh, by the end of the month, we should probably have these other people here. Like, is who is here today? If we had to, like, that's the kind of the discussion we've been talking about. And like, do we feel like we can say that, and we are limited on time. So is the best effort enough, or do we need to adjust?
Maybe we just require that when people put in their action plan, they put in all the resources, all the people they've talked to create how they created the action plan. So rather than just me sitting in a room coming up with an action plan, if I've gone out and done focus groups, or I've met with constituents in different places and talked to them and got their input, and then came up with an action plan, then I can reflect that it was done through the community. Because once again, I don't think you're gonna get a lot of community people in here and get them schooled enough and up on the speed enough to get this done.
Yep.
Especially unless you have the meetings at 7 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night, rather than in the middle of their workday.
Right.
So that's one issue. The other issue would be if we represent I represent a bunch of little community people. So if I went out to them and said, hey, can we meet together and talk about this for my place, or whatever the group is that's doing stuff, and then we come up with a strategy, and they're the ones that are giving us the ideas to push forward, then we come and represent. I guess, to me, are we comfortable enough in representing the sub-communities that we work with all the time? And can we get input from them to bring to the table? Because otherwise,
are we
yeah, go
actually,
ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, no, I was just asking. I don't think that we're representing, I think that the action plan is actually representing whoever is applying
Yeah.
for this.
Right, that's what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
what you should have on the action plan, who helped you put that plan together? Like in your case with the basketball thing, you would sit down with your kids and ask, what do we need? What do we want to ask for? How much do we need? What do we need the money for? Rather than you sitting in a room doing it yourself, you get with your kids and you talk to them about what they need and what they think COVID had an effect on, and then come up with the plan that's been informed by the people that are going to get the service.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that, Harry. And I think
Harry,
that
yeah, I was gonna
that
say, really what you're talking about is the data piece, because that we will ask also, like, because if you just submit an action plan, we're going to those italicized points of like, how do you know, and how did you engage the community? Those pieces are there, but I think
Yeah,
to
you're right.
Marcus's point, like if you come to and create an action plan and say, actually, I represent like a Latino group in the community,
Yeah.
and I know that they need this thing. I think to me, it would be important to have a representative of like the Latino group. I'm just using that as an example of like, right.
Mm.
And I can say I have passion for a community, but I do think that when we talk about doing things differently and distributing money differently and thinking differently, it really is, can we do it in a short amount of time, right? Like, can we say, and Harry, to your point, I will host a 7 p.m. meeting if it meets the needs of someone. Like,
Yeah.
I will say that, like,
Mhm.
I don't know where to go. I don't know the people to, unless we just invite all of the same people that we just invited today, or unless there's a new group. Like, we want to do this differently. And if it means that I count my time and have a 7 p.m. meeting, I'm happy to.
Mhm.
And so we also know that we are traditionally 9-to-5ers, like we just are, and it doesn't fit. So,
But Harry, to your point too, I don't think they have to physically be at the meeting. I think that as long as we can indicate in the process that I talked to 14 people from this neighborhood that said this, I think that should be sufficient as well. Obviously, we're not gonna, nor do we need everyone to come because it's messy and corporate. So, but there needs to be, and in this traditional action plan, these are literally the questions off of the action plan. And we can talk about who is most impacted and what data have you used to identify this population. But we might want to add an amendment to the process that says, how have they been part of the design of the strategy? You could kind of fit it into these questions, but that might be an
Yeah.
amendment this group suggests, is that you need to do a 1 paragraph of who specifically you talked to and what their suggestion, why they made this, suggested this strategy.
And I guess the original question is like, who's gonna make the decision, Sarah? You said like, is it gonna be this group or is it gonna be other people? My question is, who are those other people?
exactly.
Right.
Who are
We
those other
don't-
people and why are they not here?
Right, and we don't have that much time to be figuring out who those other people are, in my opinion. So I mean, I totally understand. Like, so if I'm submitting the action plan for my basketball program, I should definitely recuse myself from that part of the vote because of conflict of interest. Of course, I'm going to want us to get. I guess that's the only part is that the conflict of interest part, is
Off
is
the
part of
the
that this
table.
group making it.
See,
Right.
but I think we're throwing that out the window too, because
We are.
conflict of interest has been a thing of the past, but if we're having community members decide funding,
Yeah.
they might need that funding. So
Right.
I don't think we're gonna play the recuse yourself for conflict of interest, because
Okay.
I feel like folks know what they need. And if this is what they need, they should be deciding that this is what they need. So
Well, perfect.
I mean, it has to be that way, right? Because you guys are all at the table with a vested interest in a thing. And not everyone will have an action plan or request funding, but most probably, right? And if you all like, I'm not saying a vote is the right answer, but if you all get one vote, then like this is going to go nowhere, right? So there has to be a process in place where people are listening and like, oh, that's so interesting. And I think it would be helpful to have other people here
Yeah.
that are not also that are not requesting funding so that they can hear and be representative of the community, maybe Toby or Angie or whoever. But also knowing that the best way or ideal way to do it feels like we are fighting against time. And so like, what do we do? Do we do our best? Do we say by this time, by the, you know, by the next meeting, we need to have X amount of people here? Do we think that the current people here is great, like a good start? Should we just move forward? Like we are really trying to remove ourselves from those decisions and have the group think about that.
I mean,
Is there any way that we can come up with at least 3 priorities that we need to address? And and that's how we can prioritize, where the funding needs to go, or
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a suggestion when we talk about process, right? We talk about how the group is going to decide how the money will be dispersed and how decisions will be made. Because if there's $70,000 total, is it like in a pretend world, right? Like say everyone's like, we're going to combine our things and we're going to put one action plan in for 70,000 and here it is, right? Or it could be like Harry's an example of like maybe there are 10 strategies that are funded for 7,000 each, or maybe Marcus puts in a request for 30,000, but 15 is what is decided. So it really is, and it's up to the group. And Dina, maybe if the group is like, actually, you're right, we should focus our efforts on these 3 things. Like, it really is a part where we think our goal was to convene a group who really knew the needs of the community, and then also how to quickly and creatively think about the process too. It's a lot to ask. I know, we're like in it.
So when you guys are talking about maybe a vote, are you guys also going to have a vote? Or you can't?
I won't, no.
So, and I don't know that a voting is the thing, but no, Amy and I are not deciding. We are only the facilitators and the pushers of trying to get the right people at the table. We're the backbone staff of, obviously, of the network. So we will be taking information to the council with one of you who will be representing the group, but we don't have a say at all.
so we make the decisions. We're gonna make, okay.
Well,
If
that's
we
a
can get
question
there.
for the group.
Yeah.
Does this group make the decisions?
Oh, I think we should. I think we can. I think we're all here for the community.
Yeah, and I think that whoever we decide to give the money to needs it. I mean, it's all gonna go to some group in Jackson County, and they're gonna benefit from it. So there's no wrong answers in this, There's
The only wrong answer would be, do the decision makers reflect community voice?
okay.
If they don't, like we even talked about, if the group does not have diversity of community voice, we might as a group decide we don't have enough voices, or we haven't brought the voices in a creative way, like Harry had talked about, enough that we should be dispersing this money. Right. So we will not move forward with middle class people making decisions for folks that are closest to the problem. But if we can find ways to bring that voice to the table, and maybe it won't necessarily be them sitting at the table, if we can represent them enough in our perspectives, perhaps then it is the right group. Does that make sense, Marcus?
That makes a ton of sense. And that's the question. Do we think this group is diverse enough?
That is the question.
That is the question.
That's an issue. I've been trying to get other people to come.
Yeah. Do we need to hold another meeting? Do we want to do one more attempt at a 7 p.m. meeting where, I mean, this is you guys to decide.
I think that there are other opportunities that probably need to be taken. I think that one of the things that we have historically done, and when I say we, I mean like white-led institutions, is use this kind of scarcity mindset to push. We got to do this super fast. Everything's got to happen right now. So we use that as an excuse for not really digging in and doing the work that we need to do. And so have we established, like, I see this time frame here. I understand you've got collaborative network. We've got like a short time frame, but I also know that Dungy Tree and RIA and Partial to Girls stood up some work and did it in 3 months, and it got out the door, and it was not a problem. Right? So if what we need to say is maybe we need to push this back 30 days so that we can really get the input that we need to get, then I think we need to say that that's okay. If what we hear from the majority of people is, nope, we can't wait, that we need the money right now, I get that too, but I feel like we have to stop using this like shortened timeline as an excuse to not, and I'm not saying that you're using it as an excuse, I'm just saying, like, if there's work that needs to be done, then we need to dig in and do it and not worry so much about the timing.
I agree, except I think the funding goes away after. It has to be allocated by the end of the year. Has to be decided, or
That's
I
what
mean,
was told to
that was what told to
us.
us. So
Okay,
when they gave us the funding, they said, this is the funding. It
defined by December.
defined by December and spent between December or January 1 through September.
Okay,
So like it can't be like, we'll give $10,000 out today and $20,000 out next month. Like we have to have the $70,000 earmarked by the end of December and work begun by January 1.
okay.
And you can't put all 70,000 in one bucket and say that it's gonna be defined more by a later date. Like, okay, we could come up with like maybe 5 or 6 major themes that we think need to be addressed, and this group could come up and talk about those, and then put that and say we're putting the 70,000 to this, and how it's going to get done is going to be decided at a later time.
From what I understand, decisions need to, and program like specifics need to be rolled out by the end of December.
Yeah, all right.
Like it would be nice if we put it into this affinity group pot and then rolled it out.
Yeah, right.
I was told no.
Okay.
We definitely expressed concern about
Timing,
The
because it's not going to be
timing.
done genuine or authentically. We're not going to have the right voices. I mean, this is tough.
Yes. And frankly, if the answer is, actually, I don't think that we can do this authentically in this timeline, then the answer is, then our question is like, okay, then what, right? Like, well, then can this funding be used in a different way? Can this, if the funding is there and it's available and this process is not going to happen equitably or the way it should be, then what? You know, and I think the answer has been, well, we need to do our best and try this thing as best we can and then report back.
Because some of the reason we're even doing this is to find out if we can, as a community, take a pot of money, get the community voice and distribute that money with an equitable way to do it, with community voice deciding where the money goes on kind of a quick turnaround. I mean, that's part of it. It's not just about the money and the strategies. It's about the way we can function as a community and the way that we can make sure that community voice is bubbling up to the funder spot.
I think we can do it.
I think we have to do it. We can't let $70,000 go.
Right.
I mean, we can, even though Toby is saying that community action is well funded right now, are they always? No, I mean, we always, I mean, I lost a whole bunch in my budget this year as a government agency. I know that the money can be used. What is kind of what I'm hearing, the frustration is that time frame. So if the idea is that we have to figure this out and we have to be able to get those community voices to be so that we can turn it around quickly, then this is a great way to do it, because it's only $70,000. It's not $3 billion. It's just this amount of money. So we really, it makes us have to work together to figure out what we can do.
So that means some thinking offline, right? And I'm hoping that we
Yeah.
continue to communicate back and forth. Sarah and I can facilitate all of that communication. If you think that, if you've got a process that you think will represent community voice in the decision, throw it at us. We'll put it out to the group. The group can make decisions via email on that. Our next scheduled meeting is the 2nd, I believe. We are willing to do another meeting in between if this group starts moving, but I think that, and again, you guys might come back and say, if we're gonna come up with a form that says these 7 people want to be part of the decision once the strategies are lined up. But, I don't know. Think on it. Like, we're asking you guys to help develop this and to make, so that the question moving forward is, how is community voice part of the decision process, and encourage and spreading this wide to get people to put in their strategies that were built by community members or help informed by community members. That's the 2 call to actions.
Yeah, our next meeting, Toby, the slide, they're all 11 o'clock to 12:30. And also, we have put it out there that if there is it is a better timing, none of us, I'll just say, if it works out best for other people or more representative people to be at the table at a different time of day, we are flexible, and we would much rather do this well than be host an 11 o'clock meeting where we say we don't have the right people. We want to listen and do it all. So that is the current plan. Also knowing that a lot of things have to happen between now and December 2nd. And we don't have another meeting scheduled currently in between, which just means that between now and then, Deborah and I will chat about her action plan. Maybe if Marcus wants to talk about an action plan and the funding, and then also we need to talk with Angie. Do you want us to reach out to people? How can we best support? It's just a lot of things quickly, which we're in, but we want the group to be yes, this is it, we're in. And then we are support. We are not the decision makers in this. Any more thoughts?
I'm willing to help out too, if there's people that need help with action plans and partnering and collaborating and that kind of stuff. I, like you guys, I have some connections as well to connect people with for community voice. Probably
that'd be great.
As many as others, but I can certainly put my hat in.
That's great.
Well, I think your connection to the Pride Center would be really great. I don't think we have any representation there.
I noticed that as well. Yeah.
Right. So I think that would be, and you can make a case that people that are dealing with LGBTQ issues have been affected by COVID. So I think we just have to keep that sort of, yeah, right. Yeah. So then what does that take? Maybe it takes some activities that we put on, for people. Yep. Especially the African American community, at the same time that you put the activity together for them or with them, then you could actually distribute literature around some of the issues that there are, whether they're vaccinated or not, or how they could become vaccinated. I mean, I'm just thinking in broadly, there are things we can do that get on the ground and bring a lot of people together. So before COVID, we used to have open table discussions at our church where we have the police and different people from all different walks of life and come over and talk to people at a dinner. And I don't know that we can do dinners, but we could still have meetings in an open setting with people in the community and come and even vet out all the different proposals that come in amongst people in the community. It's just going around in my head. I'm just brainstorming
Yeah, no,
how to involve more people.
no, I love it. And I think that we hope that you guys will be vocal after the meeting and
Yeah.
letting us know thoughts and ideas. And then we can share that out with the current group. And
just and acknowledging what we talked about before too, with what Toby talked about, because in that, thinking about that, Harry, too, right? Like, it feels like if we had 6 months of time, even, or whatever, like scheduling meetings in a church and having all of these things. And so I'm just acknowledging it. It feels a little bit challenging. So anyway, but we've got like comments in the chat.
But you can stop saying we're going to give the money back, because that will not happen.
I didn't say that.
No,
I'm just,
no, you have said several
to.
times, if
I
we
have
can't
to.
figure out how to spend it, we're going to give it back.
It's not just
not how
spending
to
if it's
spend
not
it.
spent with community voice decisions.
Exactly.
That's the key. This
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm just saying, don't
So
even
now
say
figure
that
out.
again.
Yeah,
We'll figure it out.
All right, that's fantastic. That's what we want to hear, Harry. All right, well, we're going to wrap up because I know that we've taken lots of your time, but like we've mentioned, please be vocal about ideas, send them out. We'll share with groups. We'll kind of try to work offline. Are we comfortable with the next meeting being December 2nd? Because the meeting beyond that is when decisions will begin to be made. So the 16th is when voices affirm that this is the recommendation to the council, that these 6, 8, 1, or 14 strategies will move forward.
I guess, yeah. So is this December 2nd sufficient, or do we need to put something else on the calendar?
I think December 2nd is sufficient for what we need to do as a group. For those that are submitting those proposals, they might want to do some one-on-one with one or a few of us at a time, and that would be appropriate, but I don't think it has to be this formal group.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like if Marcus needs somebody to look at his proposal, or if Dina needs somebody to look at her action steps and just give feedback and what are some ideas where I can get some more community voice and that kind of thing. I think those conversations don't have to be necessarily part of this group.
Yep.
So I think
So in the meantime, then we need to go out before December 2nd and solicit as many groups as we can find to do a proposal, to jot down their ideas at the very least.
Yes,
because I don't want to just wait around till December 2nd,
Oh,
having
no.
a meeting where we haven't done anything.
Action planning should be happening currently, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Okay,
so, and
great.
that should be completed by the 2nd. So we should have by that meeting at least a list of the strategies that are already put in. They may need, like Angie said, assistance in fleshing out, but folks have already put in some action plans with strategies and should do so tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And if they want help, people.
Yeah, Harry, send them our way. If you are in the community, like, yes, send them our way.
All right.
Hit that action plan button.
I am planning on, when Sarah and Amy, when you send out the follow-up email to this, I'm going to forward that to some of the groups that I've worked with on emergency needs and coalition and all kinds. We'll get that out so that we can get it out to as many people as we can, so that we can prove to our funders that yes, in fact, we are never giving money back. We are going to turn it around quick, and we're going to make it good.
Okay, well, this is great. Does anyone have any? I know we're like a little bit over, sorry. But we'll do lots of follow-up with all of you. And if you have a burning thoughts after the meeting, please feel free to reach out as always. And this feels messy and encouraging.
All right.
All right, thanks all.
Thank you all. I appreciate your input.
Thank
This
you.
All
messy
right,
work,
talk
but
to you
good work.
soon.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.